Welcome to CRA Foundation, the fundamentals course on the EU Cyber Resilience Act. This course builds a shared language for understanding obligations, the timeline, and the roles. A reminder, this is a knowledge awareness level course. It does not represent operational or compliance competence, and it makes no guarantee of passing.
Why does the CRA exist? By the end, you'll be able to state the problem the CRA addresses and what it means for your role. Start with a scenario. A branded router ships with a severe vulnerability and gets conscripted into a botnet. The people who bought that router had no way, at the point of purchase, to judge whether it was safe. That is today's market for digital products in miniature. Information asymmetry, with no shared standard for secure. A vulnerability in a digital product doesn't stay on one device. It spills over into supply chain attacks, ransomware, even mass recalls. The EU had no horizontal cybersecurity law spanning all digital products. The rules were scattered and uneven. The CRA is the EU's answer. It fills in must meet the bar before market and maintain security across the whole life cycle after market. For makers, this is not optional. If your product contains digital elements and is sold into the EU, it almost certainly falls under the CRA, a market access question. Ready, and you get in. Not ready, and you're kept out. Hold one mindset. The CRA is a whole voyage, from design to market to maintenance and reporting. Compliance runs throughout. It does not end with one certificate.
Who and what does the CRA cover? By the end, you'll be able to identify whether your product falls under the CRA, which risk category it belongs to, and what that means for your obligations. The CRA applies to any product with digital elements, that is, any software or hardware product and its remote data processing solutions placed on the EU market. If your product cannot function without connectivity or embedded software, assume it qualifies. The regulation organizes products into 4 tiers. Most products, roughly 90%, sit in the unclassified default tier and can self-certify. Above that are Class 1 products, browsers, password managers, VPNs, routers, smart home assistants, connected baby monitors, and smart door locks. Class 2 carries higher risk, hypervisors, firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and tamper-resistant microprocessors. At the top sits the critical tier, hardware security boxes, smart meter gateways, and secure elements, where a European cybersecurity certification may be required. Not everything is in scope. Medical devices fall under their own regulation. Aviation and automotive products have sector-specific cybersecurity regimes. Purely non-commercial open-source software is excluded, though open-source stewards carry a lighter set of obligations. 3 types of economic operators share responsibility. Manufacturers bear the heaviest load: risk assessment, technical documentation, CE marking, and reporting severe incidents to authorities within 24 hours. Importers must verify the conformity assessment and CE mark before the product crosses into the EU. Distributors act with due care. They cannot knowingly place a non-compliant product on the shelf. One trigger to watch: substantial modification. If you change a product after market in a way that affects its essential requirements or changes its intended purpose, the clock resets and you re-enter conformity. Routine security patches, however, do not count as substantial modification. Manufacturers must also commit to a support period, a minimum of 5 years of security updates, unless the product's expected lifetime is shorter. The key question is not whether you ship software or hardware, it is whether that product reaches the EU market and contains digital elements. If both answers are yes, the CRA applies to you.
What must your product actually do? Annex I of the CRA sets out the essential requirements every product with digital elements must meet. They fall into 2 parts: security properties at the point of design and production, and vulnerability handling throughout the product's lifetime. Part 1 covers 13 security properties. Your product must be placed on the market without known exploitable vulnerabilities. It must ship in a secure by default configuration, and that default must be restorable. It must be capable of receiving security updates. Access to the product must be controlled. Authentication, authorization, or identity management must be in place. Data stored or transmitted by the product must be protected through encryption or equivalent means. The product must protect the integrity of its code, configuration, and stored data against unauthorized modification. It must collect and process only the data that is strictly necessary, nothing more. Essential functions must remain available. The product must be resilient against denial of service attacks. It must not negatively affect the availability of services provided by other connected devices. Attack surfaces must be minimized, including external interfaces. The product must apply mechanisms to reduce the impact of incidents when they occur. Relevant internal activity must be recorded and monitorable, with a user option to disable logging. And users must be able to securely and easily remove all personal data and settings. Part 2 governs how you handle vulnerabilities after the product is on the market. You must identify and document all components, including third-party dependencies, in a machine-readable software bill of materials, an SBOM. When a vulnerability is discovered, you must remediate it without delay. You must carry out regular security tests and reviews. Once a fix is available, you must publicly disclose the vulnerability, its description, severity, and impact. You must maintain a coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy. You must disseminate security updates free of charge and, where applicable, automatically. Article 14 adds reporting timelines. Within 24 hours of learning that a vulnerability is being actively exploited, you must send an early warning to the relevant authority. A full notification follows within 72 hours. A final report is due within 14 days of a corrective measure being available. These reports go to the ANISA Single Reporting Platform, which becomes operational on the 11th of September 2026. The takeaway is this: compliance is not a one-time gate. Part 1 governs how you build. Part 2 governs how you maintain. Both run for the life of the product.
This is F3. How do you prove compliance? Meeting the essential requirements is not enough on its own. You must be able to demonstrate that you meet them. That process is called conformity assessment, and it is governed by Article 32 of the CRA. The route you take depends on your product's risk tier. For the default tier, roughly 90% of all products, self-assessment is sufficient. You carry out your own evaluation, complete the technical documentation, draw up an EU declaration of conformity, and affix the CE mark. No third party needs to be involved. For Class 1 products, the route depends on whether you have applied harmonized standards or common specifications in full. If you have, self-assessment under Module A is available. If you have not, or if no applicable standard exists, you must use a third-party conformity assessment body. For Class 2 products, third-party assessment is always mandatory. Manufacturers must engage a notified body, an independent assessment body designated by a member state and notified to the European Commission. The notified body conducts either a Module B EU type examination followed by a Module C declaration of conformity to type, or a Module H full quality assurance system audit. For critical products, the CRA requires European cybersecurity certification at assurance level substantial or higher. Where no applicable scheme exists, the Class 2 routes apply in the interim. Across all tiers, 2 documents are central. The EU Declaration of Conformity, governed by Annex V, must identify the product, name the manufacturer, state sole responsibility for compliance, reference the harmonized standards applied, and include notified body details when relevant. The technical documentation, governed by Annex VII, must contain the risk assessment, design and development drawings, system architecture, a software bill of materials, the vulnerability handling processes, and test reports. You must retain that documentation for 10 years from the date the product is placed on the market, or for the entire support period, whichever is longer. The CE mark must be affixed visibly, legibly, and indelibly on the product or its packaging before it enters the EU market. For software-only products, it may appear on the manufacturer's website. Note the timeline. Provisions on notified bodies become applicable on the 11th of June 2026. Full conformity assessment obligations apply from the 11th of December 2027. The key question is, which route applies to your product? Know your tier, follow the correct module, complete the documentation, and the CE mark is yours to affix. The CRA sorts products into 3 risk tiers. The default class covers most products and can usually take the lightest route, self-assessment, Module A. Annex III important products are split into Class 1 and Class 2 with stricter requirements. Annex IV critical products, for example, a hardware security module, HSM, or a smart meter gateway, carry the highest risk and usually require a notified body, NB, to be involved. Why does classification matter? Because it directly decides the conformity assessment route, whether you can self-declare or must involve an NB, and it also affects which standards apply and what goes into the submission. Fix the classification first, only then can the route be set. 2 common pitfalls: forcing pure software into a hardware classification and assuming medical means CRA exempt, which is actually a carve-out to a special law, not freedom from all regulation. Annex I Part I answers, what security properties must the product itself have? At the core are secure by design and secure by default. Security must be built in from the design stage, and the factory default configuration should already be secure. The user shouldn't have to tune it, and it certainly shouldn't be patched in aftermarket. Learn a few classes of security property: access control and authentication, encryption in transit and at rest, least privilege and minimal attack surface, secure updates, logging and auditability, availability and resilience. For example, a factory default of admin/admin violates secure by default. That's a security requirement issue, not a user experience one. If Part 1 is the security properties the product must have, Part 2 is how vulnerabilities must be handled. The manufacturer must continuously identify and remediate vulnerabilities, provide free and timely security updates, maintain an SBOM, have a coordinated vulnerability disclosure (CVD) policy, and keep handling them throughout the product's support period. The key point, vulnerability handling is a continuing obligation, not a one-off done at launch. When a high-risk vulnerability appears within the support period, you should provide a free security update promptly, not charge the user, and not defer it to the next product generation. An SBOM, Software Bill of Materials, is like a product's ingredient label. It lists every component and version in the product. Common formats are Cyclone DX and SPDX. Why? Because when a component has a vulnerability, you first need to know whether you use it and which version to judge whether you're affected. An SBOM is also transparency and evidence of compliance. Supply chain responsibility is governed by Article 13. The manufacturer must do due diligence on integrated third-party and open-source components, and that responsibility cannot be delegated to suppliers. You ship it, you own it. Even if a supplier delivers a poor quality SBOM, the correct move is to flag the gap and require correction, not to pass the responsibility on.
First, 4 terms. A CVE is a vulnerability's unique identifier. CVSS is a severity score, and KEV is the list of vulnerabilities known to be exploited in the wild. They help you describe and prioritize vulnerabilities. Key idea:
Having a CVE does not mean you have risk. A vulnerability may exist in a component you use, but if your product never calls that function, you're effectively not affected. VEX is the tool that states this clearly with positions affected, not affected, fixed, and under investigation. Honestly marking not affected with a reason is legitimate. Signing it just to look good is not. Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure, CVD, is coordinating the disclosure timeline with researchers so the fix is in place before going public. Security.text advertises your reporting contact.
Not every small bug must be reported. Article 14 has two triggers: an actively exploited vulnerability and a severe security incident. Memorize the deadlines: an early warning within 24 hours, a notification within 72 hours, then a final report, submitted to the CSIRTs and ENISA via the Single Reporting Platform, the SRP. The final report has two tracks. The actively exploited vulnerability track is 14 days. The severe security incident track is 1 month. In practice, follow the official text and ENISA guidance. Roles. The manufacturer's PSIRT decides and drafts. When the manufacturer is outside the EU, the AR is the EU side coordination and submission point. This matters especially for Taiwanese makers. Most are non-EU manufacturers, so appoint an AR first and stand up reporting capability first.
This submission step has 4 things to keep straight in order: technical documentation, content set by Annex VII, prepared by the manufacturer and retained for years; conformity assessment, Annex VIII provides modules. Module A is self-assessment. B plus C is type examination plus type conformity. H is full quality assurance. The higher the class, the more likely an NB is needed. Once assessment passes, you produce the DOC, the EU Declaration of Conformity, contents per Annex V, simplified form Annex VI, legal basis Article 28, signed in the manufacturer's name. Finally, affix CE. Note, CE is the manufacturer's self-declaration of conformity, not an EU official endorsement of quality. String the order together to remember it: technical documentation, conformity assessment, DOC, CE. A consultant can help prepare, but the signature on and responsibility for the DOC always stay with the manufacturer.
You don't have to prove compliance from scratch every time. The CRA uses one mechanism to lower the burden of proof. Adopt a harmonized standard, and you obtain a presumption of conformity. Meet the corresponding standard, and the law presumes you meet the matching requirement. Standards directions relevant to the CRA include EN 18031, currently the direction offering a presumption of conformity; IEC 62443-4-1, focused on the secure development lifecycle; and ETSI's vertical domain standards, for example, consumer IoT. 2 reminders. The list of standards keeps evolving, so follow the latest official notices, and a presumption is not a guarantee against being checked. Market surveillance can still verify, and you must still keep your evidence ready. The CRA world has 4 roles, each with its own job, and they should not be conflated. The testing lab, LAB, does testing and timing. The notified body, NB, is the examiner that issues. The consultant is the coach and navigator. The platform and tools are the compass, showing how far you are from compliance. The most important boundary, training, the coach, must not be the same role as testing or issuing to preserve impartiality and avoid conflicts of interest. On the market side, authorities hold real power. They can demand documentation, order products off the market, and impose fines. Penalties are a set proportion of turnover, per the official rules, not a fixed small amount.
Finally, the bottom line that runs through the whole course: no one can guarantee you will pass. Whether you obtain certification is decided by the examiner on the evidence. Any claim of guaranteed to pass is a red line, dishonest, and damaging to the credibility of the whole conformity system. What a consultant can do is help you assemble the evidence and measure your compliance distance. Whether you pass is decided by the examiner on the evidence.
That's the whole picture of CRA Foundation. Remember, know the obligations, the timeline, and the roles, and hold the line on no guaranteed pass. This is a knowledge/awareness level course. It does not represent operational or compliance competence. The CRA and related standards follow the latest official version.